Hello and welcome to the Providence College Podcast. I'm your host, Liz Kay, and I'm joined by producer Chris Judge of the class of 2005. Here on the Providence College Podcast, we bring you interesting stories from the Friar family. This week, we continue our conversations with Providence College's Father Smith Fellows for Service and Study Abroad. Chris Bresnahan is a senior who's majoring in both biology and theology. Thanks to the Smith Fellowship, he spent 2 months this summer doing research at the University of Santo Tomas in the Philippines with Father Nicanor Austriaco. Many of you will remember Father Nick, who used to teach biology and theology at Providence. Now he is in Manila, continuing research that he began in Providence, using yeast to develop a low-cost, shelf-stable vaccine alternative. Chris, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity.
So how would you describe the Smith Fellowship to anyone who's not familiar with it?
Yeah, the Smith Fellowship is one of the best opportunities that PC has to offer. I think that it really encompasses the mission and identity of PC as a Dominican school. The requisite for it is it's student-based, so they design the entire project themselves. They can go anywhere in the world where there is a Dominican community so that they can either do study or service there. I chose to do study, so I did biology research in Manila at the University of Santo Tomas with one of my former professors, Father Nicanor Austriaco. And it was just a great opportunity to really live out that Dominican mission worldwide, to expand the horizons of the Dominican order outside of just what we've experienced at PC so far.
Can you tell us about the project that you had proposed and some of the possible applications of the work?
Yeah, so I continued some research in Manila at the university that I had started here at PC with Father Nick. That research was in developing a vaccine alternative that is both shelf-stable and much cheaper to produce. The vaccine would be made out of yeast that has been genetically altered to produce the spike protein of some disease. So we are currently working on it with COVID. Our hopes is that it could really be replicated with any sort of viral disease. And the idea is that you would ingest the yeast, and while it is living in your GI tract, it'll actually produce the spike protein for the given disease, and that will elicit an immune response that will give a person immunity, just like a normal intramuscular vaccine that you would get from a shot would give.
It's amazing. And so what are some of the benefits of this technology if you got it ready for prime time? Like, what are the advantages compared to the standard vaccines that we have right now?
Yeah, like I said before, it is shelf-stable and much cheaper to produce than the current vaccines. Like the current COVID vaccines need to be stored in a minus 80 degree freezer, or else the mRNA will degrade. That isn't a problem with our yeast because our yeast can survive at room temperature. And it's also much cheaper because all you have to do is provide the yeast with food to grow, which all that requires is glucose, sugar. So the idea is that we will be able to provide, especially third world countries, with these vaccine alternatives that will make immunizing these countries much more efficient, much safer, much faster than it was with the mRNA vaccines that had to be stored in minus 80 freezers. They had a limited shelf life. And so we just see this as a good opportunity to be able to immunize places that don't have the resources to store these unstable vaccines.
And just so we're clear, the strains of yeast that you're using, are they similar to the kind that we get at the grocery store? Like what?
Yeah, so the yeast that we genetically altered is Saccharomyces boulardii, which people may have heard of already. It's taken as a probiotic in its wild type state. So people already ingest this type of yeast every single day. So the yeast is known to be safe, both for normal physiology, GI tract, and all that stuff. And the COVID spike protein shouldn't alter any of that.
Feels like there could be applications of this technology for people who don't like needles, which I know that there are certainly lots of children who don't like it and plenty of adults as well. How are you able to predict how effective it might be?
Yeah, so it's shown to be pretty effective in some mice trials that we've done so far. And we're hoping that once we do make it to clinical trials, it will show the same effectiveness as the mRNA vaccines.
That's amazing.
In producing an immunological response.
I mean, the mRNA vaccines are incredibly effective, like 90% or more, right? That is huge.
Yeah, the science, it's fairly comparable. I mean, both are just trying to elicit immune response using the spike protein of COVID. It's just done in fairly different means. We are doing it by ingesting, so it's interacting with the immune system in the GI tract, whereas the mRNA vaccines are intramuscular, so they go into the arm. One benefit that we hope to see from our vaccine is that the spike protein, when you ingest it, will interact with the mucosal system along with the blood immune system. And so that'll offer both a mucosal immune response and a blood immune response, which is different from the mRNA vaccine, which only offers a blood immune response.
So tell us a little bit more about that. When I think there's a mucosal layer in our digestive system and in our GI tract, but there is also one in our nasal passages, for example. Or is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, so it'll be the same. Yeah. So it'll elicit immune response in the nasal capacity as well. So just like how you can get COVID now, even after you've gotten the shot, but it's really just a head cold, whereas before it was kind of a whole body illness. Hopefully, it probably won't make you completely immune to COVID. Like, you'd still be able to get it, but even the head cold symptoms would go away quite a bit.
What challenges has your group encountered with this research so far? Any roadblocks along the way?
Yeah, research in general it takes time, and it's always a little slower moving than you really hope for it to be. But with that being said, we've made incredible progress thus far. We are kind of jumping into a new field, so we are kind of going in blind. We don't really always know what 5 steps down the line is going to look like. But Father Nick has done a lot of work with the Filipino government to really set up the facilities there, the capacities there to be able to do this research. And I continue to do as much as I can at the undergraduate level here at PC. So that has made the sailing pretty smooth. And of course, there have been small hiccups along the way, but nothing that has ever really made us lose hope in the project, which is good.
But so you're continuing to do the work here in Providence?
Yes.
So what were some other highlights of your trip?
Yeah, generally in the Philippines, it really quite an amazing experience just to live there. The different way of life, the people there, it was incredible. Really, one of the things that I notice, especially, and that I bring up most often about my experience there, is the really ingrained Catholic culture that you have there. I mean, it's everywhere. You see it everywhere, and it's quite beautiful. And you see like a little bit of that, like being on a Catholic campus. Like, you see like statues of Mary, statues of saints, kind of everywhere on campus. But as soon as you leave campus, you don't see that on the streets of Providence. Whereas in Manila, it's everywhere. In stores, you see statues of Mary behind the counter, statues of Mary on the street. It was fairly common to see Bible verses graffitied on the wall, which is really interesting, really different. Murals as well, not just like graffiti, but also intentionally done murals that really were quite stunning, all over walls of the city. The gym that I went to there had a statue of Our Lady of Lourdes in the corner. And so many people, when they would walk by it, they would just touch the hand. And I don't know if they really did it consciously, but it was just the Catholic culture and the devotion to Mary there is just so ingrained. And that was really beautiful to see. I did a lot of fun stuff while I was there too. The students were incredibly welcoming. And just like the students here, there's a massive student life culture down there. A lot of it centered around karaoke. So we did a few karaoke nights, which was really fun. I'm no singer, but I still had a lot of fun doing it. And then I got to do a lot of trips around the Philippines as well. I went up to the northern capital of the Philippines, so where they go during the warmer seasons because it gets too hot in Manila. Called Baguio, that was up in the mountains, so it was really beautiful there. And then I also went to Palawan, which is one of the smaller islands of the Philippines. And that was a beautiful, beautiful island. It had the longest underground river in the world, which Father Nick and I got to go in a canoe about 2 kilometers into, which was an unbelievable experience. I'd never seen anything like that before. And so, yeah, I mean, the Philippines is a beautiful country. And so I really appreciated the time I spent there, not just because what I was able to do in the lab, but also just the experiences that I got there.
I'm curious, Father Nick has been a guest on the podcast himself, and he described a very different experience that people in the Philippines endured during the pandemic. I'm
Mhm.
curious, as you speak about the Catholic culture, I'm curious, what signs of that remained when you were visiting, like what the kind of the impact of the pandemic on the Philippine people.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic is still very much going on in the Philippines. They still have masks indoors. When I was there, we had masks everywhere. So even when I was on the sidewalk, I had to be masked. The only place I wasn't was in my apartment. And so, I mean, in that way, it's still very much affecting just because of the longevity of it that it's had there. We kind of gave up on the mask quite a long time ago, but the Philippines, it still very much affects them. So they still wear the masks. And I think that was really inspired by the fear that the pandemic brought at the beginning, because they didn't really see a hope of getting the vaccines quickly. Not everywhere in the Philippines had the facilities in order to treat COVID effectively. And so, I mean, the sickness was much worse when you got COVID there, because they didn't have as many hospitals to treat it. And so that fear factor definitely increased the effects of the pandemic there more than it did here. And it's certainly still going on. I mean, we wouldn't really need to be developing this vaccine if it wasn't. I mean, this vaccine will have effects in other diseases as well once it's more studied. But it's still very real for the Filipino people.
Your work in the lab here in Providence has opened a lot of doors for you, and not just this trip to Manila. You were among several students who were able to author a paper with Father Nick about this research in the spring. And you got to present your research at a conference in the spring as well. Can you tell us about both of these opportunities?
Yeah, so the paper is still in the works, so it hasn't been published yet, but that has been a really cool experience to just be involved in the research and the figuring out and the developing of the method, the procedure, all of the work. We did make a poster for the ASBMB, American Society of Molecular Biology and Biochemistry. And so that was really interesting as well. We got to go present that research in Philadelphia, along with a couple of other labs from PC, which was a great experience. We got to see other undergraduate science. We got to see post-grad level science as well. So kind of what we have to look forward to after we graduate. And I mean, to see, I mean, the size of the undergraduate research scope was really cool. There were some amazing projects, some amazing research, some very good presenters, which was really interesting. And there were also biotech companies that were set up there presenting, giving sales pitches, which that was actually really cool. And it actually inspired a little bit of an ethics paper that Father Nick and I worked on while I was in the Philippines as well on plastination. So I mean, these experiences that you get, they can be kind of unpredictable. Like I wouldn't really have expected to get a theology paper out of a biology conference, but that's kind of the things that doing stuff like this offers. It really expands your horizons.
I think that's a great segue into talking about your unusual combination of majors, Chris. Biology and theology. What sparked your interest in both? Which came first?
So biology came first. I came into PC. I applied as a biology major, and I mean, I've loved it from the start. And it's definitely what I want to do with my career as I get older. But really, it was the core here at PC that got me like really into the theology, both through the theology core, but also through DWC. I realized that I had more of a love for the humanities than I realized coming into school, and it was just really interesting to me to learn about it. And theology particularly, I liked the idea of really understanding what I believe, being able to defend it in an apologetic sense, just being able to talk about my faith in a reasonable way and not just, oh, I do go to church, but why I go to church. And so that is definitely part of the reason that I added the theology major. I loved being around the Dominicans, and I felt that I was learning a lot from them. And I didn't want to limit myself in what I could learn while I was here from them, which that really got me into the theology program, was really just how much it offered being at a Dominican school.
And did you get to spend time with other Dominicans when you were in Manila at University of Santo Tomas, in addition to Father Nick?
Yeah, so quite a bit. The university, like PC, has about 40 Dominicans there. And so I got to meet quite a few as well. And a lot of the places that I traveled to within the Philippines, I stayed in Dominican communities, which was really cool. I got to stay in a monastery right outside of Manila with a group of Dominican nuns, at a retreat center with a group of Dominican sisters in Baguio, a group of the same sisters in Palawan, a group of the friars in Legazpi. So like all over the country, everywhere I went, I stayed with a community of Dominicans, which, I mean, that was really cool. Like it really felt like I was living out the Smith Fellowship. It made the travel a little cheaper too, which which was really nice. But it was really cool to see that kind of the difference in the Catholic culture, the difference but the sameness, somewhere across the world. You see like the interconnected community that you see with the Dominicans here.
It's so wonderful to hear you describe the way your academic pursuit, your intellectual pursuit through your theology major kind of reinforced or supported your faith life. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the ways your academic interests have matched your volunteer work, because you also served as an RCIA student minister last year. What drew you to that experience?
Yeah, so last year and also this year, I am the RCIA student minister, along with one other student. RCIA it's a Catholic church rite, so it's not unique to PC, but it stands for the Rite of Catholic Initiation for Adults. And so that is the process of any student or professor, really anyone at PC that wants to become Catholic. And that's either someone who has never experienced any sort of faith life, so they need to be baptized, they need to receive the communion, they need to receive confirmation, or just Catholics that just never received their confirmation and they're only receiving confirmation. So we offer that to the students, and it's really been a beautiful ministry to be able to see how students' faiths can grow in college, the way that their academics, the life around them, can impact their growth in their Christian life, their growth towards God, which is really cool. We've had a number of converts from Protestantism, people that have never had any experience with the faith, but they just seemed interested because from being at a Catholic school. People that just kind of want to finish it because they've already received baptism and first communion, so they just need their confirmation. We have all sort of walks of life come into RCIA, but it's really cool because there is that like unifying factor that really they want to become members of the church and they want to get to know Jesus Christ, which is really beautiful to experience with them.
What drew you to Providence College in the first place? How did you decide that PC was where you wanted to go to college?
Yeah, that's really funny because I was actually talking to my parents about this a couple of weeks ago. Being a senior, it's kind of come full circle. I didn't actually really know. I toured the campus and I thought the campus was beautiful, and there was the brand new science complex, and I was coming in as a bio major, and so there were the things that like really drew me, but I couldn't exactly put my finger on what stood out about PC over any other school. But I did like really know that I wanted to come here. There was just really something that spoke to me about it. One thing that I remember from my tour, specifically that like I really liked, was the Friars Hold Doors. And it's kind of funny. It's really something you only hear about when you're doing the tour, but it is something that you experience here like every day. I mean, the community of students here at PC is different from any other college, I think. And actually, I've had friends visit me that have commented on that. They're always like, oh, you have such a social campus. Everyone's always hanging out with each other. They're so nice to each other. They say hi when they walk by each other, which that is definitely an aspect of PC that drew me here. And it's been my experience here thus far as well. I can't complain about the loving community at all that PC has fostered.
I'm curious about, of all the courses you've taken as a bio major, theology major, DWC, which have been your favorites so far? You still have one semester left, of course.
Yeah, I still remember my Gen Bio course with Father Nick being kind of like one of like the most formative classes that I've taken here. Really, both because of the subject matter, you know, it's an introduction to what I wanted to study, but also because it was a biology course taught by a friar. And before this, I didn't really have like a concept of being able to combine the two disciplines into one. And is seeing him being able to do it was definitely influential in me becoming a biology and theology double major. I don't know if I didn't have that experience if I ever would have done both. So that was definitely interesting. And being able to see so many different friars that are so interdisciplinary is really interesting here as well. I took a calculus class with Father Humbert, which was, again, really cool to be able to see one of the friars who you think of as theology teaching math. So both of those were really interesting. I took a DWC course with Dr. Barry, Dr. Siddiqui, and Dr. Beach, which I still tell everyone, if you have the opportunity to take Civ with one of these three professors, then you need to do it. It was one of the best classes that I've ever taken. The seminar that was run, it was always interesting. It was always fast paced. It was always moving. And to have that experience in Civ can really make or break your Civ experience. And so being able to be in such a high energy and fun environment where you're really learning a lot about the humanities, about Western civilization, then it was a really great experience.
That's amazing. I don't think you're the only one. I've heard multiple shout outs for that Civ team. So you're definitely not the only one. When you think back on your past 7 semesters, though, are there any other experiences you feel really shaped your path at Providence?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that PC has to offer. I mean, and not all of it is just being officially involved in members of clubs. I mean, even just all the nights that hanging out in campus ministry, going to McPhail's and hanging out with friends there, getting a milkshake, just walking around campus and seeing all the fun, friendly faces, saying hi to the friars when you walk by them, because they're always really excited to see you as well. It's just the whole thing about the PC experience has been so amazing. And there's really no words that I can use to express how much I appreciate all that it's offered, both socially, academically, professionally down the line. It's just been a wonderful experience.
Well, so as a senior, I kind of contractually obligated to ask you what you're thinking about as you look ahead to commencement options for life after PC.
Yeah. I mean, really at this point, there's nothing that's not on the table. I've been looking into master's programs, both in the biology field, so cell biology, physiology, but then also theology programs, Dominican House of Studies, Notre Dame. So those would be really interesting. Looked into doing a little bit of research for a year or two after graduation. Maybe a service year. I really don't know. It's still kind of up in the air. Not that I don't have options or ideas of what I want to do, but yeah, nothing official yet.
And when you think about the theology possibilities, are those kind of in the bioethics realm, or? Yeah,
I would definitely consider that. I have a lot of interest specifically in human person theology. And so I'm actually working on a thesis project for my senior year right now on the evolution of original sin. So what capacity evolved in human biology that allowed us for the use of reason, and in turn to be able to commit the first sin. So really what evolved to create the first Adam is the project that I'm working on. And so that's really interesting. And so, I mean, that's definitely a way that my biology and theology backgrounds have intersected a little bit.
Chris, it's been so wonderful chatting with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Liz.
Subscribe to the Providence College Podcast in all the usual places, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify, as well as your smart speaker. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. Thanks for listening, and go Friars.